Okay, so what did the Jews in Iraq have to do with Israel? You are so out of your mind.
Iraqis,
dude, you screaming and grandstanding doesn't mean you're right.
Government's racism.
They lived there for thousands of years. They had businesses, they had homes that they were forced to abandon to go to Israel because it was the only fucking place they could. Why would Iraqis hate the Jews living there if they had nothing to do with Zionists or Israel? Why?
Because settler colonialism was already
that has nothing to do with them, you absolute fucking dumbass.
Ethan.
What does that have to do with the Iraqi Jews?
Do you think the Aliyahs were happening initially?
So it was there, so you're blaming them?
So it's very late in England, and I've just seen on Hasan's stream they've wrapped up debating around Israel, and I was actually considering making a video before they'd even spoke, just because I knew exactly what it would be like, and I think every single person ever knew exactly what this is going to be like, but I don't really want to get into the content of the argument so much, because I think it's pointless. I think this whole chat was pointless. And I just think the discourse online now, not that we can ever reverse it back to any semblance of normalcy, is just so insane. And if you enjoyed what you just watched, you're actually sick in the head, and there's actually something wrong with you, and you actually need to go outside, and you actually need to interact with the real world. And that goes for both sides, like both people who are insane fans of Ethan Klein and Hasan, like really enjoying this as entertainment. Like, you're just sick. Because at the end of the day, what are they debating? What are they debating? They're debating the worst crime of this century. This isn't a criticism of what Hasan was actually even saying in the brief things I saw, or even his views on Israel and Palestine, because we agree on pretty much like most things, right? It's not about that. It's about just debate bros and content. When I'm seeing like IDF TikToks talking about like diversity while they're destroying like a whole territory, when I'm seeing all this dystopian shit, this just feels just as dystopian to me. Like, these two people hashing out their personal beef, because that's what the argument essentially really became, in front of 100,000 people. And the context is we're debating over the annihilation of like a group of people that is ongoing. And also, outside of this being content, what does this achieve and what's the point of this? Is any person at this point being swayed to either side? No. And I think everyone knows that as well. No one is watching that and is thinking, oh my God, suddenly I'm on the other person's side. In the age of the internet, these debates don't work like that. It's not two public intellectuals hashing out ideas and then you like thinking, oh, he made a good point and then he made a good point. It's literally two people with insane fan bases who are fighting and whose fan bases will never ever turn on them no matter what. That's just the nature of these things. So it just becomes a massive public spectacle, and it just feels dystopian and gross in my opinion. And that's coming from someone who broadly agrees with Hasan's politics in regards to things like Israel, and I 100% don't believe he is an anti-Semite in any way. Before we go any further, I need to shout this out. My girlfriend is running a half marathon. She's raising money for medical aid for Palestinians. We've already smashed some of the fundraising goals. Please donate if you can. I think we're aiming for £2,000 now. It would be amazing. Anyone could give anything. And it's in about 2 weeks, so I'm going to keep promoting this over the next 2 weeks. And yeah, thanks so much for the support so far. Thanks so much for the support for my fundraiser at the end of last year. And let's keep raising money for medical aid for Palestinians. So I'm guessing every single person watching this video probably knows what this is about, but you might not have actually watched this. And I'll admit, I barely watched this. And it was pretty much unwatchable and not entertaining, pretty cringe-inducing. I don't know how much I'm going to play you of this. So I had a very nice day today. Let me just say, I had a very nice day today. I took myself for a really long walk, saw loads of deer, saw a rainbow, that was cool. Sat on a park bench by like some lake, and I had a coffee and I had a cinnamon bun, and I had one of those moments of, yeah, like never kill yourself. This is like a very nice moment in life. I walked back and then I saw this Ethan Klein and Hasan stuff was starting, and I thought, let me have a little nap. I'm quite tired. I've had a long week. Had a nap, got up. It was still ongoing. So I clicked on it and I just screen recorded what I saw. And this is everything summed up. I don't know if I'm going to play you the full 3 minutes of what I recorded, but just the chat spamming loads of crap and just this whole debate. This is it encapsulated in a tiny clip of what went on to be like a 4 or 5 hour debate over this stuff. So listen to this.
There is, as far as I understand, there's no longer a famine in Yemen. I'm talking about before, because you You talked about how you were a regional expert.
What is blockading and doing for the poorest country on earth?
And their violent takeover of Yemen. So I was like trying to figure out what you know about this. Maybe you know something that I don't know. So I was trying to pick your brain a little bit on this
so explain
issue,
to me why it
like
matters.
you don't know shit.
Sure, I don't know about this specific thing. Tell me why it matters.
Why it matters? What their blockade?
Yeah. Clearly,
their blockade is awesome.
No, why it matters how they came to power.
Oh, because you used Saudi newspapers in the time when Saudi Arabia, according to Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, all fucking NGOs, was doing a Western-backed blockade that was killing hundreds of thousands of people, and the headlines that you used in your context puke were from Al Arabiya and numerous other outlets that had their own personal investment in vilifying the Ansar Allah movement. Having said that, of course, I also think that there are plenty to criticize about the Ansar Allah movement. I don't agree with everything that they're fucking doing, as I've said time and time again, like their banner, right? Their banner says "Curse the Jews," which you also presented in your video. Except, remember when you talked about Norm Finkelstein and how Norm Finkelstein doesn't agree with "From the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free"?
You agree with kidnapping civilians?
Can we play the clip of Norm Finkelstein talking about the "Curse the Jews" and what he thinks about that? Let's do that. Let's pull up the clip of Norm Finkelstein's thoughts on
how is that
actions and the blockade against the Israelis. You used him as a primary source earlier because you thought, he's a reputable guy, which I think I agree.
He said something that I've said that I've been criticized for. And what does that have to do with every other take he's taken? It doesn't mean that I support that. Like, we're aligned with every other take in the world.
Dan, can you play this clip real quick? Sorry, this is 50 seconds.
It's irrelevant.
I passed it along.
It's totally irrelevant.
What do you mean it's irrelevant?
Because who gives a fuck what he said about it?
Wait, what do you mean? You want to
talk about
his perspective on "From the River to the Sea" to imply that he agrees with you.
And here was what the debate essentially was. It was one guy, Hasan, who wanted to actually debate the issue, and it was another guy who didn't want to debate the issue and also didn't fucking know anything about it. And here's what it reminded me of. I was thinking, what does this actually remind me of? It reminds me of something in my own life, and I'm sure many people can relate. It reminds me of arguing with my parents. Now, let me explain. My parents aren't dumb people or anything, but it's fair to say, in terms of politics and political terms and just political knowledge generally, I have a higher degree of that. Like, I obviously did my education in it, and it's my job, right? So I remember this one argument I had with my parents where we're just talking, and I said to my mum, like, you grew up poor, right? And my mum is one of 10. She had 2 working class parents who came to England after the Second World War, always worked like very working class jobs and stuff like that. She got really offended by me saying that, right? And I was like, why are you even getting mad? I just said like an objective fact, like you grew up poor. And then my dad was saying like, oh, the poor, it has this like stigma attached. Basically, they thought I was calling them working class scum. And just from me saying poor. So I just had to explain to them, like, you've grown up in a generation, the birth of neoliberalism, you don't even really remember a world without that kind of ideology taking over the UK, thanks to people like Margaret Thatcher, who got in power when my parents were like 16 or 17 or whatever, right? So I was trying to explain it to them. And why this reminded me of the Hasan debate is they didn't fucking understand what I was saying. And honestly, I don't think they wanted to understand because they felt personally insulted by what I'd said before, right? So it became an emotional argument against me trying to explain something to them. And it just went round and round in circles for ages until I just finally said, like, I'm just not having this debate anymore because I can't have this debate because you don't know what I'm fucking talking about. So all you heard was me calling my mum working class scum, and we're going round and round and round about how, like, I'm saying, like, you've grown up in a generation that were told, like, poor people were leeches and scum because you did grow up in the Thatcher era. Just went completely over their head, right? That's what this debate reminded me of. It's Hasan explaining loads of very, very nuanced political stuff to a guy who doesn't know about it, but doesn't want to know about it. He wants to have a debate over his personal beef with this guy, and he's emotional. What he's mad about is the personal attacks against him. To be honest, I don't even think Klein really cares about Israel at all. I don't think he gives a shit about any of it. He's proven time and again, he's very easily influenced by anyone he talks about who has a degree of knowledge on these things that he doesn't know, right? So that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of a child arguing with one of their parents who doesn't not even know the subject matter. So that's what the entire debate was, just Hasan going through stuff in loads of detail, and one guy just saying no, 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 because he doesn't fucking understand. So he's not even engaging with the substance. So ultimately, this whole thing became absolutely fucking pointless. But I think anyone could have told you that. Now, it actually did get more unhinged. And I'll give you another little snapshot into their debate when they start talking about like Healer Klein being in the IDF, and it's just like, all Ethan was saying the whole time was, this is boring content. This is boring content. This is boring content. Which, again, plays into my whole point about this. It's just a spectacle. What is the actual point of this, apart from feeding the commentary slop economy?
Is Ramallah a part of Israeli territory?
I mean, it's complicated, right? It's under occupation. No, I don't think so, but it's under occupation, right?
Okay. So why was your wife in Ramallah?
Maybe are getting a terrorist that killed civilians. She
It's
sat in a
not
car.
complicated, Ethan.
She sat
It's
in a
not
car and
complicated
didn't
at
even
all.
leave it and never
Your
did
wife
it again.
participated in an illegal raid according to international human rights. That is the reality. Now, I understand.
Are you upset
the
if this
importance of
person
social
killed like
conditioning.
a
If she
child?
were-
Would you be upset if this
she were to
person they
talk about-
arrested like
if-
stabbed people? Like you don't know what you're
If she were
talking
to
about.
talk about how fucked
Okay,
up
fine.
that
My wife's a
was-
terrorist, bro. What the fuck? It's
No,
so boring.
stop. Listen to my words. If she
No,
were to talk about
my
how
wife
fucked
is a
up that
terrorist.
as
Very
many former IDF vets have on breaking the silence, if she talked about the night raid that she participated in the same way that
Just
former
like Frogan
IDF
says,
vets
only
that
I
are
don't
part of
hate
breaking
only the ones that
silence talk
regret
about,
it.
I would have no issue with her.
Do you
wanna
hope
know
she
why?
gets
Because I understand
PTSD
people
too?
can change.
I
Okay?
don't condone the raid, but I mean, see, neither of us have any information about like what actually happened. You know what I mean?
There is no. You don't understand. She is illegally there. She is not
Okay,
supposed to be
she's a
there.
terrorist.
It does not matter.
She's-
Her
yeah.
and her entire brigade was not supposed to be there. That is an act of
I don't think
terror.
she knew
And
what
as a
they were
matter of
doing.
fact, what she participated
I don't think
in,
she knew what they were doing or where they were going.
What she participated in is
I don't think
called
she
a
knew
night
where
raid.
they were going or what
she
they were doing.
participated in is called
Okay,
a
she's a
night
terrorist,
raid.
bro. Please, we got to move on.
The
This is,
reason
like,
why,
just
the reason
so-
why the Israeli occupying force, the reason why the
Oh
Israeli
my
occupying
God,
force
dude.
participates
People wanna
in
watch
these night
this.
raids in the West Bank,
You're making
is
this
to create
unwatchable.
a
Let's just-
constant, a
Okay.
constant feeling of terror.
Hassan, talking more does not make you right. Okay, you got
The
to
reason
understand.
why the Israeli occupying force
You're repeating
participates
yourself.
in night raids is to create a constant sense of terror upon the
We
Palestinians.
don't condone
who
it.
are
She was
there
19. She
in
was
their
doing
own
military
land. Listen to
conscription. She
me.
didn't know where they were going
Listen
or what
to
they
me.
were doing.
Listen
okay?
to me.
Thank you.
Listen to
I'm
me.
listening, but you just keep repeating yourself.
The
This is what
reason
you
why,
do.
the reason
you
why
gotta
I
move
know,
on. I want
the
to have
reason
a,
why I know that. You
Son,
want to know why I
you
know
gotta
that?
stop.
Do
Do
you
you
wanna know
want
why
this
I
to be
know that?
unwatchable? Is that what you want?
What?
Do you want this to be unwatchable?
The reason why I know that, Ethan, is because
I'm
of
take that as a
breaking the
yes.
silence veterans who have come out and spoken out against this practice. That's why I know that.
Hassan, you say that Ela could have gone to jail and done a conscientious objection instead of joining the army. Why do you pay taxes?
What?
Why do you pay taxes to
This
the United
is your
States
big
government?
argument, Ethan?
Answer
that I
the
pay
question.
taxes and I'm morally culpable. I know. That's why I try to fucking fight against
Why don't
this
you go to
goddamn government
jail?
doing this shit
Well,
every
why don't you
day.
stand up for your Why don't you stand up for your principles and go to jail for it?
Because it would not actually stop. Okay, it would not actually stop. The reason why I'm saying,
What
I
wouldn't
don't
stop?
I don't take issue with Gila's fucking actions then, as long as, just like you said, she was just 19 years old. I take issue with the fact that she still defends it on principle. She says the
What did she
Israeli
say?
occupying force is not a terror organization. You have a disagreement with him. Or
Well,
her, sorry.
I think I can see it from her perspective too, which is like, the problem with you
Yeah.
is that
But you
everything's black
can't
and
see
white.
it from
Again, it's the same sort of premise, but you're also debating about a guy's like wife's like actions and stuff. So even that is just like, he's not going to have a rational like this discourse about this with you, is he? Like, he's just not. So it just feels so fruitless. Hasan was trying to make the point that from different perspectives, you see how people do bad things, right? So your wife was in the IDF because she grew up in Israel and she was a teenager. The same way someone who grows up in Palestine might join an organization because all they've known is bad stuff and they join that because of their circumstances, right? That was the point Hasan was making. But all he hears is my wife is bad and let's move on. This is boring. This is boring. And he's just thinking like he can't argue this point with him. So he just like, let's move on. And that's basically what the whole fucking thing was. And what is the value of this to anyone? Again, are you going to have your mind changed by this to either side? If you like Ethan Klein and you are more like a liberal Zionist, are you going to suddenly become like anti-Zionist after watching this. If you like Hasan, like myself, you're obviously going to be more on his side politically, but then objectively, I think it's clear to anyone, these two people just didn't want to have the same conversation, and they tried to have the separate conversation live in front of 100,000 people, and that's when it descended into just like a shouting match. This is what actually happened later on.
You are out of your mind.
Not about Palestinians.
Okay, so what did the Jews in Iraq have to do with fucking Israel, you bigot? You are so out of your mind.
Iraqis.
Dude, you screaming and grandstanding doesn't mean you're right.
Iraqi government's racism during the pan-Arabic nationalist movements as a vindication for why, or a comparison as to why Israel had to do the Nakba.
Do you think
fucking
that...
racist piece of shit?
Thanks,
Do you
Hasan.
think Iraq? Do you think all Arabs have one fucking mind? Is that what you think?
Why the fuck were the Iraqi Jews leaving Iraq in fear?
Of course there were Iraqi Jews that left Iraq in fear.
Because why? Because why? Answer the question. You want to call me racist? Why were Iraqi Jews leaving to go to Israel?
You're a fucking moron who doesn't understand.
That's why they left. They left because I'm a fucking moron.
That Arabs are not one-minded.
Hasan, you coward.
That there were numerous
you coward.
nationalist movements.
Answer the question. You're going to call me racist, but you won't answer. Why did the Iraqi Jews leave Iraq?
There were numerous reasons.
Because of anti-Semitism. They hated Jewish people that had nothing to do with Israel. They were forced to leave. They were chased out. They lived there for thousands of years. They had businesses. They had homes that they were forced to abandon to go to Israel because it was the only fucking place they could. Why would Iraqis hate the Jews living there if they had nothing to do with Zionism or Israel? Why?
Because settler colonialism was already
that has nothing to do with them, you absolute fucking dumbass.
Ethan.
What does that have to do with the Iraqi Jews?
Do you think the Aliyahs were happening initially?
So it was there. So you're blaming them? Are you blaming the Iraqi Jews who had nothing to do with it? What the fuck is your point?
You call me racist. The racism. I'm not justifying it. You're not comprehending my point.
Yes, you are. They
I've
left
never justified that.
because the Iraq turned on them after 1948.
Ethan,
you're materially wrong. You're a liar.
That there were numerous reasons.
So again, they're debating there, I think, something that is nuanced, and you have to have a calm demeanor about. I think they're talking about why so many Jewish people went to Israel after it was created and how they were persecuted in various Arab countries, especially with the rise of like Arab socialism and Ba'athism, and basically the point that Zionism and conflating anti-Semitism and Zionism has always made Jews less safe and drove a massive wedge between Jewish people in predominantly Arab countries. So then they felt like they had to go to Israel, and if Israel didn't exist, then these societies would exist in more harmony or something like that. That's the conversation they're trying to have right there. But that's what the conversation is. So again, what is the point? What is the point of having this conversation and even trying to talk to this guy about it? Do you think he even fucking knows what you're talking about? I 100% do not think Ethan Klein knows anything about this. And I think I'm the same as Hasan, I think, in this regard. Sometimes when you do know a lot about politics, right, you just assume people know stuff as a given. You really shouldn't over-assume how much the average person knows about politics and history. Because of our terrible education systems, they don't know much. So when you're trying to engage in complex issues like Ba'athism, Arab socialism, early Zionist movements, World War II and the aftermath and everything like that, you can't assume that everyone knows what you're talking about. But again, it's like me arguing with my parents. They didn't know when I said stuff like about neoliberalism. They didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. We were arguing from completely different points of view where they didn't even want to entertain what I was saying. And that also ties up the emotional side. Sometimes when someone is speaking to you and arguing with you from a point of like information and knowledge, you get even more defensive because then you feel like you have to like put your guard up because you're like, oh, I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want this guy to look like he's smarter than me. And also I feel insecure now because he clearly knows what he's talking about and I don't. So I'm going to act more unhinged. I'm going to start saying more random shit. I'm going to escalate this. We're going to start shouting about it because that's the frustration that comes with this kind of debate. Now, the difference is me and my parents' arguments about the word poor weren't in front of 100,000 people. They're in front of just the people arguing. And even in that context, it was frustrating. But that was us arguing about something political that really fucking doesn't matter. These two people are arguing about, again, the worst crime in the 21st century. It's still ongoing. And people are all engaging in this spectacle. Now, Hasan does genuinely care about Palestine. I'm not saying he doesn't. But even he bears some responsibility for turning this into just like this, you know, this Twitch fight night shit. Because even the poster he was posting on Twitter before depicted it as a fight. But, like, what are you debating? what are you debating? And that's why I really hate debating politics. And it's been a thing probably for the last 6 or 7 years. So many different debate bros debate really serious topics, and it just becomes a match about personalities, all the things of like parasocial relationships of audiences and who they want to see fight who. That all factors into these things, where again, these debates are pointless, because I feel like when you have really big personalities like these two, they really don't convince anyone. And it's just gross to me that so many people are excited by this. Like, think of all the commentary slot YouTubers who suddenly have started talking about Palestine, but they're taking the Israeli side just because they hate Hasan. Like, they have no principles when it comes to this stuff. They don't give a shit. If Hasan was pro-Israel, they'd be pro-Palestine. That is how they don't have any morals, and they don't give a shit about politics. They love this shit. They're going to have so many anti-Hasan videos out of this, and just because they hate him, and they're going to use this issue to pretend Ethan Klein had some sort of like massive wins and points about these issues when he wasn't even debating the issues. It was all just wrapped up in his personal grievance, and obviously the iDub stuff going in with that because he feels backstabbed by someone he used to be friends with. Like, that is where they're debating from. But I think both bear responsibility, and both fan bases bear responsibility for just turning something so serious into just like this memey debate for everyone to watch as content and entertainment, which basically makes the issue they're talking about completely irrelevant. Most people who tuned into that don't really care about Palestine, in my opinion, because if you really care about Palestine and you're enjoying that, like, you're actually getting some sort of entertainment and enjoyment out of these two people linking their personal beef and having a shouting match around really serious issues. I honestly think you become so content brained, just like Ethan Klein in those clips talking about this is bad content, this isn't fun to watch and stuff. You think just like that. And even though you might hate Ethan Klein for his pro-Israeli politics and stuff like that, if you think like that as well, there's something wrong with you. And you've allowed the online world to basically really ruin your actual worldview and not have a clear head when you're thinking about these issues, viewing them all through the prism of online content and online politics. And obviously that is a criticism for Hasan as well. Like, if you're on stream 8 hours a day, viewing the whole world through this lens, and you're recording everything you do as well. Like, even when he was doing that stuff with the California wildfires and he's streaming it, it's like your whole world is just online. And that's how you don't even really have a second thought of like, should I have a 5-hour debate about the worst crime of the 21st century with a guy who I know doesn't really give a shit, who I know doesn't know what he's talking about. So it's just going to become content, a spectacle. I'm going to have 110,000 people watching this. And again, I like Hasan's politics. I agree with him on the pro-Palestine stuff, but I still think this stuff is wrong. And to me, it feels gross. And the only thing I will say is I understand for some people, it might feel cathartic to have someone who is in the wrong, Ethan Klein. Obviously, his crusade against pro-Palestinian content creators is wrong. It's cathartic to have him finally confronted by someone like Sam Cedar and maybe someone like Hasan. But when Hasan is the target of a lot of what he's been doing, that conversation is just always going to be fruitless. Like, I would say the conversation yesterday with Sam Cedar, that was more productive and that is more beneficial because you have two Jewish men and Sam Cedar obviously has no relationship with this guy. So they're just talking. And even though Sam even got emotional at some points, it's still like this level-headed conversation where I can maybe see the value in that. There was no value in 5 hours of this shit apart from pure content. And everyone is fucking loving it on every single side. And I'm not just being a contrarian here. There is something wrong with you if you can watch that. And there's something wrong with you if you actually take pleasure in watching something like that, because you've just replaced something in your real life with these online personalities, and you really have to think about your relationship with these people. Still, is this really the place we're at with all this stuff? Just two men shouting at each other in front of 110 people, all spamming in the chat for their side, which is completely turning the worst crime against humanity into some sort of content for Twitch streamers and YouTubers. Now, hopefully this is the end of that, but we all know like Ethan Klein probably isn't going to let it be the end of it, and there's going to be so much slop tubers all reacting to it who know absolutely fuck all about it, and it just reduces the quality of discussion around any of these things. Hasan's not responsible for that, it's just the YouTube ecosystem. Also, I know a lot of H3 fans and Hasan fans will watch this. To make it clear, I have no relationship with Hasan. We're not friends, we've never spoken, like we've never collabed or anything like that. He's watched a few of my videos on stream. The first one he watched was actually me criticizing him for his aesthetic and his consumerism. He's watched a couple of my other ones, which are calling out pro-Israeli liberals, I believe, and a few other ones. We've spoken a tiny bit in Twitter DMs like over a year ago and stuff. I both don't hate him to make it clear to the Hasan fans who get offended at everything, we're not friends, and I'm not criticizing Ethan Klein because I'm being controlled by Hasan who's telling me to do this. It's just pretty clear for anyone who cares about Palestine that one guy, Hasan, clearly cares about the issue and knows about the issue, and one guy, Ethan, clearly doesn't fucking know anything and is terrible at debating it because the bubble he gets his information from is probably so pro-Israel, but also I just don't think he fundamentally fucking cares about any of this. He just cares that he's having a massive beef with another streamer. And that's pretty much it. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.